Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Any world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Any world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here coming at you live from my studio / RV dining room located directly inside America. And yes, folks, good point there, Jimmy Bobby. Watch out for an old Muppet Mikey. He's looking kind of bloodthirsty. Anyhow, folks of the interwebs, thank you again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. We'll be your pilot and, once again, your host of Operation GCD. JJ Vance here, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president. Anyhow, folks of the interwebs, thanks again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. I will be your pilot and navigator for tonight's shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. Someone got raptured? I hope not, because those damn ancient alien cargo cults talking about their apocalyptic ends again, huh? With their damn raptures. Anyhow, not gonna lie to you folks in the interwebs, got a real barn burner here on deck for y'all tonight. We're gonna do the anatomy of the Satanic Panic, and starring everyone's favorite Muppet Mikey there, and everyone's favorite U.S. Army Special Forces Psychological Operations Officer there, Muppet Mikey Aquino. They claim he passed some Special Forces exams. I highly doubt this doughy bastard did any of that. And we're obviously going to be continuing to talk about his pal in this journey of the Satanic Panic, Laser Tag Ted.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
Watch your six, folks. They got Ted twice. Apparently, those lasers are dangerous. So we're going to be jumping into these conversations here tonight on our Patreon preview of tonight's conversation. We have a special guest here as well, but before we get into those matters, got a couple of administrative points to make here. Tomorrow night, Operation GCD Fridays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. We're going full-blown process. Dana Doodahl is the guest, and in fact, Jacob J., host of Rise to Liberty, will be tomorrow night. Will be my guest co-host, and he's my special guest tonight here. Jacob J., sir, host of Rise to Liberty. How you doing? Welcome back. Thanks for joining me to get a little GCD.
Thank you so much for having me back, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. So,
yes, sir. I think you have a unique perspective. Yeah, unique perspective on a lot of these matters we discuss here on this series, and I appreciate you joining me. And I definitely appreciate you joining me here tomorrow night as well for Fridays, where we'll be going full-blown process. And real quick, if I got a couple more notes here, sir. Operation GCD Sundays on Saturday this week will be the anatomy of a false flag cover-up. That's where this Muppet, federal public defender Judy Clark comes into play. You need to cover something up of a false flag and high-profile parapolitical situation. What do you call her? From the Unabomber to the Boston bomber and the Atlanta Park bombings.
Right.
She's your Muppet. So be unpacking her activities relative to those cases and, the overarching issues with those cases, because one thing that happens when she comes to town is nothing gets adjudicated. No justice is to be had, no facts are to be known, no court hearings are to be, convened, if you will. So, and then on Sundays, I got another 6 degrees. Operation GCD Sundays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. 6 degrees of the Ohio serial killer of dogs. Serial killer of dogs. So this fella here, Jacob, he got sentenced back in March. The judge called him a serial killer of dogs. He was the Process Church's top pit bull trainer.
Wonderful.
Yes, the Process Muppets are some of my favorites as well. I genuinely get a good laugh out of Muppet Robert de Grimston here. So,
right.
These are the matters coming up here. But tonight we're going to be doing Anatomy of Satanic Panic, 6 degrees of satanic music, and as I like to put in the the suggestion there, ask a former Satanist, because that is a unique perspective you have, sir. Is you spend some time in the Church of Satan. You're very knowledgeable in music, as we've discussed offline a bit as well, and you have a unique perspective as well, because you have a very solid understanding of the works of Dave McGowan, and that is how I got here today, sir. If it was not for Dave McGowan, I would not be radicalized into the environment I am here, hosting Operation GCD, talking about satanic serial killers. Come home. Mikey style, the Phoenix program. It is his thesis, which I've used as an underlying foundation for the series.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it is different, kind of interesting. I I kind of forget that I have a interesting perspective that not everyone was a member of, or practicing Satanists at some point, and sometimes it
before
just
that,
kind
a
of
Mormon.
escapes my mind. Yes, raised
I'm
Mormon.
trying to berate you, but I do find it fascinating to go from Mormonism to the Church of Satan.
Right.
And I'm not saying in a judgmental fashion. I do find it interesting. So, for example, there's a fella who grew up as a child of the Process Church. He grew up down there in Kanab. He left the compound, and now he's a Mormon bishop.
Right.
So these things interest me when those things happen like that.
Right.
I myself spent 22 years in the Mormon Church, and I have my thoughts and ideas of the experience, but nonetheless, I'm always intrigued by where folks go after that.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, it's
Rise to Liberty,
kind of
sir.
interesting.
Rise to Liberty, sir. Do you have any plugs you'd like to offer? Introductions? Pardon me, to your show and any of the things you're working on.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, you can find me pretty much anywhere that is Rise to Liberty. I've tried to corner the market on that name pretty much anywhere. The best places to find me, or to find where I'm active, is usually Twitter or X, Instagram, and Telegram. Those are the places I'm most active. Of course, there are several other places. Anyone that would like to support my work, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee or a Ko-Fi. So, because both of those, in my opinion, are some of the better places to be able to support somebody, especially somebody of my audience size and everything. Also, one of my home base is actually going to end up being my Substack, which is like 90% there, getting ready to launch. Also, people can go check out my merch at risetoliberty.store. I've got some pretty cool merchandise with my name, and I've actually got a couple of new designs dropping tomorrow, actually. So
nice. All right. Well, I'll put a link for that in the show notes, and whenever you get your Substack up, sir, we'll make sure I get that and update that in the show notes for you.
The Substack is up right now, but I am kind of relaunching it with it being, there's going to be like paid memberships and stuff, or the option of free, and there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff. But it actually is up right now. There is some pretty good articles about the Phoenix program, a huge list of serial killers that came out of the Phoenix program.
Oh, well, that's now you're talking my language, sir.
Right.
Where am I to find this Rise to Liberty store? I couldn't find the Substack.
Let's see. So I can pull it up for you. I can just send you the link real quick.
That'd be great, sir. I appreciate it.
So it's actually not a Rise to Liberty store. It's actually my it's actually another project called Beware the Mockingbird.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yep. So it was actually a different project, the Mockingbird Media, telling everyone to beware that mockingbird, because boy, is it still active.
Well, I think that's a good point. I think it's a term often overutilized and understood and not understood. Overutilized and not understood, because we don't know the depths. First of all, we don't know the depths of the program, and we can assume, and rightfully so, that it goes on today. But is that the only program that controls media? Right. That's I have a lot of questions in regard to these things. So.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you can check out a few different things. I've got an active list going on right now. It's a list of CIA cutouts and business fronts and everything, and it's a huge list. So if anyone goes through the list and sees that there is a business or an organization or a university that's not on the list, just get a hold of me, let me know, and I can put it on the list. But right now it is pretty active. It's absolutely massive. It took me a long time to put that list together, so make sure and go check that out. And yeah, this big article right here, MK Ultra's Vietnam Shadow, all about the Phoenix program. And I put together a list of serial killers that were either directly involved with Phoenix or at the very least were Vietnam veterans.
Oh, all right. Well, now you're really, again, you're talking my language. This is a journey I've definitely gone down. So I could dive into some of these topics tonight, sir, and go over your article if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. So.
I do find all these matters fascinating because obviously in Dave McGowan's Program to Kill, we learned that, for example, Richard Ramirez, his guardian was a member of the Phoenix Program assassins. Right.
And was showing him pictures and it was actually his uncle, I believe, if I remember correctly. It was his uncle that was directly involved with the Phoenix Program, and his uncle would come back, or was back, and would force little Richard when he was like 8, 9 years old to sit and look at all of the pictures that he took over there, which was basically just horrific serial killer photos. It's just mutilated bodies and all sorts of terrible things that the Phoenix Program actually did. So that definitely.
Not only that, sir, that man killed his wife in front of Richard.
Right.
So he had a lot of violence leading up to him by some Phoenix Program assassins. So I think that's a prime example, although it's not the only example. We got Dahmer, Arthur Shawcross over in Germany at the same time, in the U.S. Army. We got Israel Keys. I just did an Israel Keys invades Vermont. This where I apply these concepts of the Phoenix Program come home, satanic serial killers, and Operation Gladio, 2 of Bill Colby's programs, Colby's Queers. And lo and behold, it's the same pattern. We got a Nazi satanic serial killer, Israel Keys, connected to the Aryan Nations compound, grew up with Timothy McVeigh, grew up with the Kehoe brothers. These are all, those Kehoe brothers and McVeigh were involved in the 90s domestic terror campaign. They like to do it every 10 years. This is their stated purpose. So the mid-aughts was Israel Keys. He's got the pentagram on his, and a smiley face brand on his arm and a pentagram brand on his neck. And he's a devout Nazi Satanist who's doing the things that I'm asserting in this series. In fact, this was a Sunday show I did because I was only talking about kind of the impact he had on my bootleg home state of Vermont. But it is indeed these matters of the Bill Colby's Queers, the Bill Colby's Operation Gladio and Phoenix Program, and for that matter, Air America come home. And we see that with Michael Aquino. We see that in his stated purposes of his own statements of what he did in the Phoenix Program. He wasn't an assassin, not that doughy bastard. He was their slaps the mind war guy. He's over there weaponizing folklore, weaponizing religion, and against the local populations of Southeast Asia. And that is what we see here, right? I mean, that is how do you weaponize Christianity against the population? Well, Satanism. Right.
Which is easily one of the perfect ways to do just that. And one thing I would like to point out is as far as Satanists go, not all of them, but a lot of them are definitely just pissed off, edgy atheists, that just have daddy issues or mommy issues.
There you go. And that's a great point. That's a great point to emphasize. You need your front porch Satanist, right, if you will, to make it look good. Right.
Well, and I would say that's probably I would say at least a vast majority of them. They are just edgy atheists. It's like the edgy teenager that just never really grew up, and that is a majority of them.
When I think that's what they're aiming for, right? So I think that's what they aim for. As I've been unpacking in this series, I've been looking at the propaganda and the Sops to Mind More stuff. Mm-hmm. But even in the pre-Sops to Mind More paper of 1980, we see phase 1 from 1975 to 1980, the first time we see Satanic Panic. And it's wrapped around an individual named John Todd and Mike Warnke, these quote-unquote former Satanist priests who are now evangelical ministers. And they're the ones who seed to us in our brain holes that there's Satan in our music. And that will be what we get into tonight on the other topic besides the one you just introduced so eloquently for us, sir. Appreciate that. And on that topic, I like to play a game here on Operation GCD. It's more or less my Make-A-Wish Foundation, granting a wish for actor Kevin Bacon and his search for a new Patsy. And I'll let him introduce it for us from there.
The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. In case you haven't heard of this game, the idea is that any actor alive or dead, can be connected to me through our work in 6 steps or less. How did all this start? In 1994, I'm minding on my own business. I'm making movies. I'm trying to raise my family. And I don't remember exactly how I first heard about it, but it just kind of started to seep into my life. You know, people would come up to me and say things like, you know, my cousin made up a game about you. Or, dude, I'm so hungover, man. I was in a bar last night, and we were playing your game. I got shit-faced, and I'm a mess. I was absolutely horrified. I was furious. But I stopped, and I said to myself, you know, sometimes you have to confront your demons. Sometimes you got to face the beast. So I said, I'm going to go in, and I'm going to look these guys in the eyes. I'm going to say, listen, fellas, you know, get another Patsy, okay? You know, find somebody else.
No, you asked for it, Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees of satanic music tonight here. That's your new Patsy for this evening. And I got a little chart here, a little depiction of what we're going to kind of be getting into on that matter. And that is the onset of heavy metal music, focusing around Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, of course. And we have this kind of a flow chart of where it goes from there. But they are the onset. I think we can agree with that, right, sir?
Yeah. So, I mean, to really get into it, so you do have pre-metal, which is, you know, things like The Who, The Beatles, The Kinks, Cream, Jimi Hendrix.
You just named a lot of processing related bands, sir. So please continue.
Right. You know, then of course there's it's kind of the meshing of you know, white music and black music, right? So you also have Niccolo Paganini, Richard Wagner, Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson, Buddy Rich, Elvis Presley, Little Richard.
How about Steppenwolf, Sons of Nazis?
Yes, of course. Of course you got Steppenwolf, which is actually where you know, the term heavy metal actually came from, or at least that's what they theorize.
It is attributed to that, right?
Right. It is like the first commercialized use of the term heavy metal.
But before we had this kind of music, right? Before we had this era of rock and heavy metal and these derivatives, you just kind of laid the outline and framework for. We had a different kind of rock and roll music in this country.
Right.
And that was an older style. The Buddy Hollies, the Big Boppers, the Richie Valens, they all died in the plane crash here the day the music died.
Right.
And that ushered in a whole new era of music, rock and roll, which is the bands you just named. And again, they're all very Satanist related, very processing in many respects, be it the Beatles, the Stones, etc.
Right. Well, and then you have Elvis Presley, which actually was from this era.
He bridges the gap, right? He bridges the gap, right?
Well, sort of. I mean, he was there, but there was a change in his music, and a lot of it had to do with once he picked up the drugs, which, in my opinion, is a huge entrance into the satanic world.
And he did that by just co-starring in a film with this lady who he allegedly had an affair with, and whom Anton LaVey says, and he dedicates one of the women he dedicates the book, the Satanic Bible to, but he mentions in a 1972 article. I like to use folks' own words, sir. I don't like to try to impose my views or opinions on these matters. I will offer them. But as far as unpacking the satanic panic and the anatomy of the satanic panic, I like to take Aquino's words and LaVey's words, compare and contrast to their actions and see if we can't discern fact from fiction. Right. And LaVey says in his own words that Tuesday Weld, he dedicated the Satanic Bible to her because she's part of the rituals. In a 1972 interview called Straight from the Witch's Mouth, and you may be thinking, witch? I thought he was a Satanist. In fact, he says he wants folks to get confused on what to call him. This is their intent, to have folks argue. This is LaVey and Aquino's statements, to have folks argue about semantics, be it wizards or Satanists or whatever you want to call them, and then they'll never understand or have a time to have a conversation about the actual activities of these people. Right. Well, and this is a double-edged sword, no pun intended, because semantics do matter to an extent, because the whole point of semantics existing to begin with is to be able to distinguish two things from one another. So there is, but that's what makes it so deceptive, right? Is because semantics actually do matter, but it's the manipulation of the semantics, which is what allows them to hide in plain sight. That's a great point. What are your thoughts on this? Jimmy Bobby's making an excellent point here. Thank you, Jimmy Bobby. What are your thoughts on Blue Oyster Cult and heavy metal?
I mean, they are definitely part of it. They have their influence, most definitely. I wouldn't consider them heavy metal, more of hard rock, considering the time. But
that's a fair point. I don't want to go full blown process on you, sir, because that is tomorrow night, not tonight. But they are process, very much
right.
so.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, all you have to do is look at their album covers,
Right, and they set up shop. That Secret Treaties album where they got the process robes and they got the German shepherds. That's they're at a church which is a few miles down the road there from Pound Ridge headquarters of the process.
Right. Well, and there's a whole other side to this heavy metal as well, because a lot of there's a lot of punk influence which also has process ties. Some of the original punk, like the Ramones, the Damned, Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Vibrators, the Saints, the Dead Boys. A lot of these bands also had connections to the process, especially the Sex Pistols, because they were coming out at the exact same time.
So I think we have Tuesday Well to thank for that. I think she's the high priestess of sorts, behind the scenes, kind of, the puppet master. We see her being, and this is stuff I'd like to get into in the show here, sir, tonight. And again, thank you for joining me tonight to get a little GCD on these matters. And thank you, folks of the interwebs, because here we go with this guy right here, Peter Asher. He owned the Indica Lounge in the Mayfair district, a member of the process. His first cousin was a founding member of the process. And I saw my favorite CIA bot, Bill Colby Ballwasher, RR channel. Good to see you, sir. Commenting on, is Paul dead? Well, yeah, Paul is dead. But the original Paul was dating Jane Asher, and that was Peter's sister. And they were all part of the process. And it is the Indica Lounge that was owned by Peter, where John met Yoko. And Peter's a major figure in music in Hollywood, or since then, and since the 60s. In fact, he's a major figure in the Diddy situation.
Right. So,
let me just make sir, RR channel, I had loved his dedication to being wrong. So if you want to look at the Help album, RR, and tell me those are not Crowley hand signals, that they're sigils or signals they're doing on the Help album cover, wearing process church cloaks. Well, I don't know what else to say there, sir, because I just told you where John met Yoko, and where Paul and his girlfriend, whose brother owned the lounge, and it was the process church headquarters in the Mayfair district. So these things are not to be separate. They have been separated for many years, and I've always wondered what this is, where folks don't. Peter Asher gets almost no covers when it comes to satanic stuff in music, or the Diddy situation for that matter.
Right. And so there is like one fundamental key to all of this that I kind of want to like dispel. This is like a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, when people are talking about like the Beatles being involved with Tavistock or the process or anything. There are definitely some bands that are, for lack of a better term, like created for the process or by Tavistock or even by the CIA. However, not every band. Some bands are entirely organic, and they do come up, in a grassroots sense, but then they are corrupted or they're overtaken.
There you go. So, but on that note, I don't disagree, but they're probably born into a situation, right? Like a David Crosby or something like that, who has no talent,
right?
Becomes this major figure within this kind of Satanist rock scene, if you will.
Right.
The Age of Horus, or wherever you want to look at it, all these bands, they make references to all these things.
Right. Well, and
I just had a fun. Hold on, sir. I just had.
No, you're good.
Some shit just fell. We're good.
So, I mean, this has really got to be taken by like an artist by artist basis, because not every artist has the single or like the exact same pathway to fame. One of the people I like to point to, which is unrelated to all of this heavy metal stuff, is actually Katy Perry. And the reason why I point to her is because, I mean, she's, for one of the largest pop stars in the world. But the reason why I point to her is because you can very clearly see her progression. When people get introduced into the music industry, it's a very common theme that like maybe their first album, when they first get signed, they have like a lot of control over, they're able to come in and have a lot of opinions, but the longer they stay in, the less control they have over their music. So this isn't just like a light switch that's like on and off. Although, once again, caveat, there is some of those bands. If we're talking about early, protest rock and stuff like the Byrds were a completely manufactured band, right?
Sure.
So that is a exception to this rule. However, if you look at certain artists, you can see their first album, maybe their second album, they have a lot of creative control. They make a lot of decisions, but then they slowly start becoming more and more unhinged the longer they are in the industry. And the reason why that happens, at least my theory as to why it happens, is because they don't want these artists knowing what they are being used for. They want these artists just as brainwashed as the rest of us, because then they're easier to control. If these artists are let in on the secret, then, I mean, they kind of have some leverage, right? So if they're also brainwashed into this, it kind of changes things. So they have an easier time controlling the music, controlling the artist, if they themselves are also brainwashed into being a part of this.
No, I mean, I think hypnosis is a big part of all of it. Yeah, for sure.
And like I said,
Elvis,
it's got to
was
be
absolutely into Thelema. Holy smokes! This
Right.
may be a monumental moment here in Operation GCD history, sir. I agree with RR channel.
Yes.
So, and he was a major occultist. He was part of the Manson family crew and circle of friends there, if you will.
Right.
And in fact, I do believe Charles Manson when he says that he kicked Elvis on his ass out of his Bel Air mansion on the front yard for 2 weeks in the summer of '68. I don't think he's lying.
Right. But once again, that's already pretty far on into Elvis's career. So once again, I mean, you can watch Elvis as he begins his career. Even like the Beatles is another great example. They didn't start off taking LSD and pushing a bunch of progressivism, right?
Behind the scenes, they did though, right?
Who?
Behind the scenes, the Beatles were always doing that, I think, though, right? Like, look at the album Help, though. It's just, I see what you're saying. They did a flip. They flipped the script on folks, so to speak, on the public view. But that's all some proto processing cloaks. That's what the process was wearing at the time in the Mayfair district, right?
Right.
And again, they were hanging out at the Indica Club. That is where Paul and Jane were hanging out. Peter was the owner, their first cousin. Asher was the founding member, and that's where John meets Yoko. But what I'm saying is they're clearly into Thelema here. These are Thelemic symbols and rituals shit. And they're wearing processed cloaks. So I just think at some point in time they may have flipped the script.
Right. Well, and it's really, I mean, without knowing these people, it's like, how much of this do they actually know? Because to say that all of them, meaning all the musicians, know everything about all of it all the time is just an absurd thing to say. Like, they don't know about any of it at all ever. Both extremes are an absurd thing to say.
That's a fair assessment. That's a very fair assessment.
I would say that like some of the members of Led Zeppelin knew about this and were very familiar with it. This is a band, in my opinion, that was very familiar with a lot of these occult black magic practices before they were even outwardly projecting that onto their audience. But like I said, this just has to be taken by artist because not everyone has the exact same path to stardom. I mean, there can probably be an argument made that even in some bands, some of the artists know and some of them don't. This is why
it's very compartmentalized, right? That's a great point.
It's literally whatever is needed by the powers that be at that time, which is why I actually even believe that like some artists can be used for a satanic message at one point and then put back on a shelf, and they're not at a certain point, and then brought back out at another time. And it's kind of all over the place. So
you're right. They're playing characters, sir. That's a great point. We can put a pin on that one real quick. And I'd like to come back to that here in a moment, because here's a guy connected to Black Sabbath and heavy metal, and he seems to have been ritually human sacrificed.
Right. I'm not sure exactly how much I believe that, but it is definitely something to take into account. In fact, there is a
Let's briefly look at those details. I don't remember them off the top of my brain, other than thinking there was definitely a sacrificial nature to this situation. Maybe it wasn't his death. Maybe it was somebody in the band. Who died from this band earlier? Somebody died from this band earlier, and they were murdered in New York State somewhere.
From Dio's solo project, or his he was in a band. He was in a band called Rainbow.
Well, we'll get into that one in a second, because I do want to talk about these weird deaths, because we have again, a processing band, the Rolling Stones. We got Brian Jones. He meets a demise in 69, and then in 1979, 10 years later, I believe it was, or 1980 perhaps, his bandmate Keith Richards' domestic wife murks a young man nude in her bed. A 16 or 17-year-old teen in her bed. No one explains any of those details. She's not charged. It's declared a suicide, that he was playing a game of Russian roulette. However, once again, we have more seemingly ritually sacrificial murders around the same group of folks.
Right. Well, and there was also a time when the CIA actually tried to kill the Rolling Stones. And what's interesting about the Rolling...
This is an awful day, sir. If I may just interject, I just, what does life come to in Muppet World if I'm finding an agreement with RR Channel? You know what I mean? The Stones suck. I agree, the Stones suck. Again, Sympathy for the Devil, the snuff film that George Lucas films in '69 there at Altamont. I mean, these things are just kind of, people strafe right past them, and as if they're not like actual details or facts or things that actually occurred. And you're like, wait a second. Well, they're like, I've had conversations. If I just may interject real quick, I've had conversations on the Stones with Brian Jones and gang there, and you're like, oh, what? Just because they say Sympathy for the Devil, I'm like, wow. Well, let's start with the snuff film they did. How about that one? The George Lucas film.
I do think bands like Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, I think they're completely overrated. Jimi Hendrix, same thing.
Oh yeah, well there we go. He's my next guy up here. So this is one of my biggest things. So when you're talking about the kind of demonic influences we've kind of gotten or inferred upon here on the show so far and talked about on offline, where do these ideas come from? Where do the music come from? Where do the chords come from?
Right. Well, like I said, you have to take this by artist. And when you're getting into some of this, it's song by song. So Jimi Hendrix, the song Voodoo Child, there's actually an album. I can't remember the name of it. You can find it on the Internet Archive though. And you can actually, it's a recording session that was recorded and released. And you can actually hear every single track of the song Voodoo Child being written and performed in the studio, and you can hear it slowly develop over time. So it is a really interesting thing to listen to. I believe it's just like Jimi Hendrix recording sessions or something like that, but it is a full album, and it starts, with the song being a rough draft, and then by the end, it's like I think it's like 12 tracks all the way through. And by the end of it, it is officially the song Voodoo Child that everyone is familiar with. So,
yeah, we even get devil stuff in the country music. And speaking of Charlie Daniels, I did a show.
It does happen a lot.
Show here in Operate, and I think there's a lot more to that subject too within the country music field that gets ignored. But as far as the devil goes down to Georgia, Charlie Daniels went down to South Korea, and he almost didn't come back. I tell that tale here on Operation GCD, where my supervisor in the Air Force nearly ran myself and Charlie Daniels off a cliff in a fucking tank. That happened in my life. So the devil may went down to Georgia, but Charlie almost never came back from South Korea.
Right.
So when we look at this matter here of Jimi Hendrix, though, I think it's a great character you're mentioning. He's got some occult stuff around him. He's hanging out with the monkeys. His best friend's Jack Nicholson. They're doing a bunch of weird psychedelic occult films in the 60s. Right. Head. Right. The Trip. He's touring with the monkeys, right?
Right, and he was a very common guest at the log cabin in Laurel Canyon. He was kind of all over the place. Jimmy.
Damn it! Someone beat me to it. Yeah. Well, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
So, Jimmy, I think, is one of these people who actually was just used. I don't think he himself was intentionally or overtly any sort of occultist or any sort of like Satanist or anything. I believe that pretty much everything of Jimmy, his entire short career, was driven by somebody else. They were directing him and using him for what they needed him for, and as soon as he wasn't needed, he was taken out.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assessment. I would push back a little bit though and say that I don't think you can be best friends with Jack Nicholson and not be an occultist. So,
well, I mean,
we see Morgan Freeman's best friend is Jack Nicholson. We see Jimi Hendrix's best friend is Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
I argue they're the same person. When you say that he's playing a character, I do think he's being used. I think he is playing a character.
I don't know if I would agree with the Morgan Freeman, Jimi Hendrix thing, but I'm definitely going to push back on the guilty by association thing. I think you can definitely be put around people and be controlled by these people.
No, so you're saying part of his role he's playing then is he's associated with these people.
He's more of a useful idiot than anything.
Well, I can believe that. Would you believe that Morgan Freeman plays guitar left-handed?
Yes. Yes, I would.
And he owns a blues club at the Crossroads where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil.
Well, one of them. There's actually 3 of the Crossroads. Nobody can actually agree on exactly where it happened. But yes, I did know that.
And it's called but his club is also called the Crossroads.
Right. Which is also a wonderful movie if you've never seen that, with Ralph Macchio, an 80s movie. It has Steve Vai in it as well. It's kind of like a
legendary guitar player.
Right. It's kind of like a Devil Went Down to Georgia, but in the form of a movie.
Sure. I don't want to get too far off track, but we don't meet Morgan Freeman until 6 months after the death of Jimi Hendrix.
Right, which is odd. Now, I would think that they're probably related, but then what would confuse me about Jimmy not being a real person and not actually being murdered would be what was the point of taking out the agent that murdered him?
Well, sir, when we talk about Satanism stuff, we talk about spook activities. The two are inseparable. So we're talking about where does this deception begin and where does it end, right?
Right.
And I would say that even folks like Morgan Freeman / Jimi Hendrix, who have the same best friends spanning decades, who look identical to one another, who play guitar like one another, and who everyone even mistook this man when he had a bandana on to be Jimi Hendrix. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of deception going on. It's just hard to understand, I think, where it
right.
begins.
But that's also why I'm not like sold on it.
Wonderful. But that one.
No, I get you. I understand what you're saying. But let's just take a gander at this clip real fast.
A harem type thing, with sash and blousey, and I had a huge fro, and they put a band around my head, and I walk out on stage. First preview audience, I guess it was preview. The free theater doesn't have previews, do they? Yeah, do they? Oh, yeah. First preview. Then it was the first time they had an audience, and I walk out on stage, and somebody way in the back said, "Sing Purple Haze."
So, I see what you're saying. I just think the reason I bring this up as well is when we're talking about satanic music and the 6 degrees they're in and the characters who are playing it, we've established already there's numerous parties involved. There are infamous parties in this movement that weren't talented and they were put there playing characters. And I say, what's the next evolution of that? What's the next step in that progress of evolution of thought? And that is that they're playing characters, and this is spook operations. And sometimes their characters done. So like we see Cass Elliot die in the same, again, according to a 1974 report from the INS, or I believe it was the FBI, I apologize, from the Sanders files, she and John Phillips are financiers. I believe it's called the financiers, they say, of the Process Church in Los Angeles, in addition to the Beach Boys, right? So we see her dying across the street, basically, from MI6 headquarters there in London at Harry Nilsson's apartment. And I believe it's 3 years later we get, was it Keith Moon? The Keith Moon's death in the same apartment? Correct.
And I do agree that this happens. In fact, I actually believe that this is what happened with Jim Morrison. I believe that his character actually was just...
you know my brain holster? That was the next one I had up here.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I totally believe that his character was just done. They didn't need the Jim Morrison character anymore, and he probably, cut his hair, grew a beard, shaved it off, whatever, and moved on. I just don't believe necessarily. Now, I could be convinced that Jimmy is still alive. I just, from what I know, I don't believe that he's one of the ones that actually happened to.
Well, man, again. So, like, I try to look for the prime example, right? So, Hendrix, I think, has got some good examples. There's an argument to be made about Cass and whatnot there, but Jim Morrison. So, his father literally an admiral, the youngest flag officer in U.S. Navy history. How did he get there, right? You know what I mean? Who's his daddy? What did he do? And then did he get signed up for stuff? So in 1967, at the height of his fame, he goes on national TV, and when asked where he's going to be at in a few years, he says, "Oh, hopefully, I fade away into corporate America." And then I believe it was Dick Cavett was like, "What the, had to look like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're the rock god. You go on stage and declare yourself the rock god. What are you talking about disappearing into middle America?" Right.
I mean, he's the Lizard King, right? And I mean, what's really odd about him is he showed up out of nowhere, basically a fully developed rock star at a time when rock stars were not a thing. And also he allegedly wrote all of the Doors songs within a matter of like a year. And that was it. Like, what the hell? That is way too strange. That is far too strange. And then his dad being the chief architect of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is like, what the hell is that all about?
Yes, sir. And we see Jim with his father. I believe it's 12 months before he erupts in Los Angeles as some sort of rock god. On the ship on the bridge of the ship that his father takes over to Viet fucking name. So he is a great character because we see one of the last known photos of Jim. I believe this is February 72. When did he die? Is this February 72? Perhaps. What's the date of his death?
Somewhere right there, 72, 73.
Yeah, so this is the last known photo of him. And again, July of 71. So this is February of 71.
Okay.
And the only
July 3rd.
The only folks who have seen him dead are his witch domestic wife and a doctor who French investigative journalist has determined never existed.
Right. Yeah, his bandmates never even saw the body, which they've all gone on record to say that was incredibly strange to them, because a few of them actually requested to see him and were vehemently denied. Nope, they're not going to see him, and he was already in the ground and cold by the time that any of the band members were able to get to Paris. So
that's right. So we have the last known person that we can identify that even knew him to be dead or alive. There was his witch. Literally, she's a devout witch.
Right.
So, I mean, we're dealing with more, again, back to the occultism. So all of the witchcraft comes from Crowley. So Buckland, Gardner, Frost, they all cite Crowley as the which they've derived from. And they all cite Crowley as being more Satanist than LaVey could ever be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, LaVey was, just like a lot of them, LaVey was, a con artist at heart. So, it's just interesting because I think like a lot of these actors, because I do think that that's what most of these people are. I do think, like I said, Jim Morrison, I wholeheartely believe that his character was just not needed anymore. It served his purpose, and he doesn't exist anymore.
Apologize about that. Hold on, sir. Technical difficulties. Please go ahead. What were you saying?
But not all of these actors are going to be treated the same.
Sure.
So some of them are definitely going to be killed. Some of them are definitely going to be recycled. I even think some of them have probably, had major reconstructive surgery, and turned into an entirely different person and recycled.
I think you're spot on, sir. I think you're spot on. And note to the Pedro here. Yes. Ray Manzarek. Many of these bands had like one musician, one actually talented person. And that would have been Ray Manzarek for the Doors.
Right. Yeah. And especially with a lot of the early US metal and a lot of the, I call it protest rock, the Mamas and the Papas, the Turtles, the Byrds, all of these bands that came out of Laurel Canyon, that's all like, granola hippie, tree hugging protest rock. So
for sure. So this picture, I would assert, looks more like Rush Limbaugh than it does Jim Morrison. And if you take Jim Morrison's words in 67, he's going to disappear into corporate America. Well, there you go. So here we go in 1992, I believe this is Rush Limbaugh.
Ladies and gentlemen, inaugurate
Rush Limbaugh singing along with the Doors song, "This Is the End," from a gold microphone, of which is the same model in which Jim Morrison used. So let's check that out.
Right.
Today on the EIB network. This is our
This is the end.
euthanasia update.
Yes, friend. This is the end. My only friend in the end. I'll never.
This will be a short one, so I'll be ready on the close.
This is the
Our euthanasia update.
Sounds just like Jim.
He does sound pretty damn familiar, which I also want to point out real quick, that gold microphone of
He didn't
Rush
have,
Limbaugh.
he didn't have it in that clip, but he did use the same model gold microphone. I'll bring it up.
Right. That microphone was actually gifted to Glenn Beck after Rush Limbaugh died.
Oh, the Mormon, huh?
Glenn Beck recently hosted the Charlie Kirk show and brought that golden microphone and placed it in Charlie's spot. Yes, he did. In fact, let me see if I can find a clip of it real quick.
Yeah, please do. That's very interesting because again, it's a lineage. It's the chronology of events and lineage of these actions and the people that interest me. And again, I am firmly convinced this was indeed Jim Morrison. They both had they also both another circumstantial piece of evidence. They both had a serious heroin problem. Right. Yeah, that's incredibly interesting. I mean, it makes sense though. A lot of those guys at that time, had massive heroin problems. It was the cool thing to do back then, right? Right. So, and then Rush famously had all of his opioid issues. Right. Let's see. So if you want to pull up what I have, it's actually the clip. So let's see. It's a 2-minute clip of let's see. Yeah.
Day that I thought was appropriate while I did the show, that I would sit in front of Charlie's microphone. It was given to me after the death of Rush Limbaugh by his wife.
There it is.
Microphone.
I think I froze my back.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, dude, that's interesting. That's very interesting because I think Glenn Beck's an interesting character.
Oh, yes. Not
many people convert to Mormonism at the age of 40.
Right. Well, and I think that was all show anyways.
Charlie's microphone.
Well, he married a Mormon, right?
Right. So I mean, he places the microphone right in front of Charlie's spot. It's like
Charlie.
Isn't that weird? So
I mean, this whole matters of Charlie Kirk are again very interesting. Charlie Kirk's forefather, Lieutenant Joseph Kirk, of the Virginia chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. That should not be ignored. His wife is Swedish. Her father or grandfather, I forget it is. There's only 20 folks in the entire world named Francie. It's one family.
Right.
And her grandfather, I believe it was knighted by the King of Sweden, who's a member of the Society of Cincinnati.
Right. Which is just
right. That's what I'm saying, dude. So, but again, when you start just for Glenn Beck, I'm going to look more into this Glenn Beck situation. I'm very intrigued by it because, you're an ex-Mo like myself. Again, it's odd to me that he would convert to Mormonism regardless of who he married, because I'm always confused by these things. And
my
cousin here. Yes, sir.
I just think it's it's a play. It's a script for him. I don't think that he's converting to Mormonism because he actually believes. It's got to be for something behind the scenes that we don't see. I don't believe
he
it.
He believes, sir. He believes. He is a true believer. I witnessed it myself in the years beforehand for his official transition there. I used to hang out at Fox News like it was a bar. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
So one of my dudes, like one of my garbage can dudes, one of my quote unquote brothers in life, I've known since 1998 or so. There, he did one enlistment in the Air Force, military police, and got out and went to radio broadcasting school, and he's been on the production side of Fox News ever since then, and for the last 20 or so years, 20 plus. So, I used to go up there to Manhattan, hang out with them. My favorite bar in the world, especially America, is there. McSorley's Old Irish Ale House, built in 1864. Folks like,
Hell
I'm sorry,
yeah.
54. Folks like Abraham Lincoln and gang have been there, and anyone since then you can think of note, basically. But I used to be a
Right.
regular there, despite never living in New York City. But in doing these things, I would hang out at Fox News. And Glenn, I assure you, the years preceding Glenn Beck's transition there, when he was at Fox there still, he was deep in the mounds, dude. He was getting real big in all these mound stuff, ancient American
Right.
history and everything else. I do
Right.
think he became a true believer at some point.
Well, I think there's definitely, I mean, he believes in something, but even some of the leaders of the LDS church, I don't believe that they actually believe what they're preaching.
Fair enough.
So-
Fair enough. That's a good point. All right, sir. Well, we're going to bring this Patreon side to a close. Folks can check out the rest of this conversation here, what we've been introducing here, the 6 degrees of satanic music, some of these weird, high weirdness around there. And again, ask a former Satanist, kind of a vector check on a lot of these ideas we've been discussing. I want to hear more about these this blog post you've done, sir, with the satanic serial killers connected to the Phoenix
Yes, sir.
program and the military. That's a very salient characteristic of all of these things, because when we're dealing with all these things, everything in all of these cases, I'm sure you've identified, get labeled matters of national security. No
Yes,
different
sir.
than Israel Keys.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it
So-
happens quite a bit, which was actually one of the reasons it was actually really hard to put together that list of serial killers that came from Vietnam. There's a lot of these guys who have had their entire histories just scrubbed. They're just gone.
For sure. Let me ask you this question. I can give you 2 examples of that right now. Randy Weaver and John Todd. They both knew each other.
Right.
Shocker.
Right.
When we're talking about the matters of who seeded these ideas of Satan in your music and did so in a controlled opposition fashion as part of a psychological operation, well, that is John Todd, the convicted kid diddler John Todd. And he
Right.
started doing that in 1975, 1976, along with a fellow named Mike Warnke. We'll kind of look at more of the onset of that again tonight, get some of your thoughts on that as well. But we do see that it is the false pretenses in which these are presented. And I'm not saying it's not real. I do
Right.
think there is not only backmasking. I think that's present in a factor in this satanic music and deceptions.
Right.
And I do think, like you were discussing before, the frequencies that are being tuned to are done so in a manner that are
Right.
going to have a very unique impact on folks' brain holes.
Right. Yeah. It's just, I said this last show is just like, you become what you eat, or you become the thoughts that you have. You also become the music that you consume. It does. All of these things do play a part in who you become. They influence the way you look at the world. They influence, your thought processes and stuff. And, I think you can, protect yourself a lot from this if you understand a lot of this. But to say that it has no effect, I mean, just look at the any community at all that listens to rap music. And now, drill music is the big like like gangster music, I guess, that is promoting murder and death. And there's just a lot of crime surrounding drill music, dude. And it's just like, I am not convinced that the music has no effect on people. Like it.
It obviously does, right? I mean, you can look at a mosh pit at any concert, look at the way folks act. Look at a grown adult women painting their hair like Lady Gaga. I've seen that and experienced that in my personal life with some of my dudes'
Right.
wives and whatnot. I'm like, so anyhow, thank you, Jimmy Bobby. I appreciate it, sir. I do like to offer nothing but barn burners here on Operation GCD. No bombs here, nothing but barn burners. But I do appreciate folks in the interwebs for joining us here tonight to get a little GCD. And Jacob J, I appreciate you joining me here tonight as well, sir, to get a little GCD on these topics. We'll be heading over to the Patreon side. Folks can check out. Do you have any closing thoughts or statements before we head on over there? Any plugs, sir?
Yeah, it just like I said, as far as the Satanism stuff, this
probably. I'm sorry. This dude,
No,
this again, I couldn't pay somebody to make such idiotic statements as our channel. I appreciate your dedication to being a moron, sir. Did he know Aquino? Probably Aquino reported directly to Colby at the U.S. State Department headquarters in Saigon. It's well documented. So, again, sir, I'll see you next time on our channel. I do appreciate your dedication to being wrong. And again, by no means am I trying to run you off. Please continue making these statements. This is
No,
it's obviously great fodder and humor for myself, but he had nothing to do with serial killers or drug trafficking. What do you think the Phoenix program and Air America were, dude? Have you lost your mind, RR Channel? I need someone check his status. So you think we got a man down, RR down?
it was just leaded gasoline that caused all the serial
dude.
killers,
Oh yeah,
right?
swamp gas. My bad. It was swamp gas.
Yeah, exactly. With the Satanism stuff, it's the one thing to remember is that, like I said, with the music, it has to be taken by individual, band by band, artist by artist. Not everyone has the same path. Some artists are used their entire career for a satanic message. Some aren't. Some are brought into it later after they're famous. Some are completely manufactured. So this is not a cut and dry black and white issue. It's a really, really gray issue. And a lot of these people, it's just something that you've got to take it individual by individual case. Now, when you start doing that, when you start doing that, you can start noticing who are the satanic bands, who are the satanic band members, and you can start picking up on the messages a lot easier when you take it case by case.
That's fair. But on that note, I totally agree with you, sir. I think that's a very reasonable point you're making and very cogent statement. I definitely think it's a reasonable approach. But I also think it's reasonable to rely on our senses. Ignore those psyops to Mind War and Muppet Mikey and gang saying these are not the Satanists you're looking for, right? That is the message they give us in their propaganda, right? And I argue to use your folks need to use their discernment and senses in conjunction with that and reach a reasonable discernment on the topic, like you're saying, individually and taking in the factors, right?
Yep.
But we can also look at this and be like, oh yeah, that's obviously satanic Nazi shit.
Right.
It's the Process Church philosophy in an album called The Process. It's like, it's Bad Company and an album named Bad Company, a song Bad Company. Hey, do you think they're bad company?
Right. I mean, hey, there's a heavy metal band called Goat Whore, and they are an overtly Satanistic band. You don't have to look at them and be like, I wonder. There are those cases, but
and there was a point in time, sir, within rock and roll music here that we didn't. I mean, outside of that diddler, sex offender guy Chuck Berry, there was a time in which, and even then, his music wasn't outwardly satanic or nothing, even though he was obviously doing some dark shit. But there was a time before the day the music died, before Tuesday Weld's boyfriend Don McLean, whose third great grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel in the New York chapter of the Society of the Cincinnati, Lieutenant Colonel McLean. And again, Weld's from the Massachusetts chapter family of the Society of Cincinnati. And before the day the music died, when her husband, disregard her boyfriend Don there, sang about a very overtly satanic ritual in which this plane was crashed and brought in a new era of rock and roll.
Yes, sir. And I, just to touch on this real quick, I think the same thing happened with the death of Hank Williams and country music.
Bo Cephas? Bo Cephas' dad.
Bo Cephas' dad, Hank Williams Sr.
Hank number 3's gone way. That apple's fallen way off, far from the tree.
Yeah, he is his grandpa reincarnated. Big fan of Hank III.
I don't dislike his music. I'm just saying he's not like, again, each generation of the Williams boys seems to be starkly different than the previous.
Yeah. He is his grandpa reincarnated, though. I full-heartedly believe that. I've actually met him, and it's like talking to a ghost. It's strange. It's like talking to his grandpa. It's different. Although, he is, one thing I can say about Hank III is he is about the music. He doesn't care about the fame. And he's been screwed over by the music industry and is actually not producing really much of any new music because he's stayed out of it. So, take that for what
I think that happens. Prince did the same thing kind of too. I think he would very, very much be involved in the occultism aspects of a lot of things. And then he kind of separated himself from the music contract again, it's the contract with the devil, right? Peter Asher, again, Peter Asher, major Hollywood executive. He owned the place that he's a Processian who owned the Indica Lounge in which the Beatles operated out of, where John met Yoko, et cetera, et cetera. So these things I don't think are far separated. Again, as you said, drill music If you plot out
Right.
the early onset of gangster rap, I saw a comment earlier about NWA, and they were like, "Oh,
Right.
regular song," and then "fuck the police." They
Right.
if you plot out the onset of gangster rap versus the incarceration of largely black population, young men 18 or
Right.
16 to 28, you're going to find that those on a graph, they go hand in hand. That's the same chart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like that meme on Twixter I always see with all them Spider-Men pointing at each other. They're all feds.
Yeah,
It's all feds.
yep. 100%, same launch as, CIA launching crack cocaine into the hood and everything.
Well, there you
You
go.
know?
Well, these are
So-
marketing devices. You said earlier,
Right.
sir, these are marketing devices like the Rock is. That was a marketing device for the crack in the hood with the gangster shit.
Right. Just
And then
like
you hire a Juilliard trained, let's be honest about it, gay, homosexual man, Tupac, to be one of your major figures in that.
Right.
And then you kill him off as a character, right?
Right, exactly. And then, I mean, the same thing happened with all the Laurel Canyon rock and LSD. I mean, the Grateful Dead was completely manufactured to push LSD. Same with the Doors. I mean,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And the Grateful Dead is brought to us by Tavistock. Thank you, RR, for saying Tavistock has nothing to do with music. The
yeah,
Tavistock
right.
founder son was the president of the music publishing company Ice Nine Records for the Grateful Dead for their entire career in his life, and
Yes,
was
sir.
also the best friends with Jerry Garcia.
Right. And I mean, the same thing happened with the grunge era and heroin. It's same exact thing. There's a reason why all of those musicians were doing heroin. Thanks, Courtney Love. And,
Who was handing out LSD in that hippie scene, right? At the age of 9, according to her father. Hank
Yes.
Harrison of the Virginia Harrison's founding father family.
Right. And then she later hands out heroin to the grunge scene in the 90s up in Seattle.
Yeah,
And
and
the
she's
Pacific
deeply ingrained in
Northwest.
that Epstein situation too, right?
Yes, she is. I mean, she started her career as a prostitute in Ireland. So,
Yeah, well, she's one of the major figures in that book, allegedly, right? One of the in the nose,
Allegedly.
if you will, allegedly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, allegedly, because she is incredibly litigious.
Right.
So,
All right, sir. Well, on that note, we'll see folks on the interwebs over on the Patreon side here momentarily. And thank you all again for joining us here tonight. To get a little GCD, the link's in the show notes, and Jacob J's links will be in the show notes as well.
thanks everybody.
Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Hey, world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom!